Soldiers of Christ, arise, put your armor on. Strong in the strength which God supplies. Strong in the strength which God supplies through His beloved Son.
Good evening, everyone. It is 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You know what time it is? It's time for the Christian Report. Folks, we are so glad you're with us tonight. We've got a very special show in store. Just as a reminder, we're on every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. We're on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, on Roku. We're on 6 different cable networks as well as 2 digital TV stations, K26 out of Harrison and XL7 out of Mountain Home with the good folks of Hometown TV. Just love being with them. Thank you very much. We don't have much time, only 30 minutes in this show. Folks, this is a live Bible show. This is my personal cell phone number. You have a question, you have a Bible question, I can guarantee you Matt and I are going to give you a Bible answer. We will never answer with this is how we think, how we feel, or how we believe. We're just going to answer with what the Bible says. And folks, if you have a question, a biblical, a religious, a Christian-based question, you better be looking for one answer, and that's what does God say? What does the Bible say? Not what man says. Well, let's get going with the show. Tonight's show, I hit the wrong button. Here we go. Tonight's show is called Don't Believe Everything You Hear. Now, our foundational scripture tonight is 1 John chapter 4 and verse 1. John's writing to Christians. He says, Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits. It means to test, to examine. Try the spirits whether they are of God. Why would John tell these Christians that? He goes on to say, because many false prophets are going out into the world. Well, the great thing is the Bible has given us the ability to test people to see if they're real prophets or not. Well, tonight we're going to be speaking about this man right over here, Joseph Smith, who claims to be a prophet from almost 200 years ago. Now, you may be thinking, now here we go. Vincent's going to beat up the Mormons. I am not. I'm not going to use any anti-Mormon books or websites or anything. Take all those anti-Mormon books, throw them away. We're only going to use the books from the Mormon Church, from the Church of Latter-day Saints, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And the books that they provided me, they gave me a book. Nice people. They gave me a Book of Mormon, which is called Another Testament of Jesus Christ. Take a look at Galatians chapter 1 verses 6 through 9 about that, and some other books that we're going to cover tonight. We don't have much time. We're going to get going. All right. Now, folks, one thing we got to understand, we've covered this before, that it is not hard to study the Bible. Paul writes to the church in Corinth, 1 Corinthians chapter 14 and verse 33 says, For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. So we can understand this. It doesn't have to be confusing, all right? Even when Jesus spoke, recorded in the Gospel Mark, chapter 12, verse 37, and the common people heard him gladly. Folks, I'm just a common person. I'm just no cowboy from North Arkansas. If I can understand the Bible, I know you can too. I'm not that smart. All right, let's get going. We've talked about this. This is the test to see if someone's a prophet or not. We've talked about this several times here recently, especially Matt, talking about Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 20 through 22. We're just going to hit the highlights. Verse 21 asks a very important question about someone who is going to speak as a prophet, how you examine their prophetic utterance. It says, How shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? They're basically saying, hey, how will we know if this guy stands up and says he's a prophet, if he's really speaking from God? Well, verse 22 gives us that answer. If the thing follow not, nor come to pass, this is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. So if a prophet, someone who claims to be a prophet, gives a prophetic utterance, and it doesn't come true, then it didn't come from God. Then that person is not speaking for God. It goes on to say, but the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. That means to be a prideful liar. And he goes on to say, Thou shalt not be afraid of them. And what that means is, if that prophet says, if you don't follow me, you're going to hell, we don't have to be scared of what he says. We don't have to fear what he says. We don't have to fear the damnation that prophet says, if you don't follow me, that lies in wait. Because his prophetic utterances aren't true. That's simple. This is how it works, folks. God has a message. He delivers it to a prophet. That prophet then delivers it to the people. That's how we see it work every time in the Bible. Now, If you have someone who claims to be a prophet and they did not get a message from God, but yet they give it to the people as if it came from God, well, only God can see in the future. It's not going to come true. What happens? Well, that prophet fails the test. Fails that test that we just saw in Deuteronomy 18. Now, that test was designed and given to the people from God to protect the people from false prophets. But it was required for the people to do the testing. And that's what we're going to do tonight. It was so serious. God didn't want a false prophet speaking to the people. It was so serious. This is the command that he gave. Verse 20, but the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. Well, folks, tonight we don't want anybody to die. But we can separate ourselves from someone who claims to be a prophet and they are not. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to examine some prophetic utterances tonight. So let's test some of the prophets of the Mormon church tonight. Now, folks, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not. I'm just trying to get the truth out there where we can all see it. If Matt and I have not told you that we loved you at least 100 times, we'll say it again 100 times. We love you. That is why we're doing this show. We could be at home with our families, but no. We're up here doing this show because we want to get the truth out there. We don't want anyone to be lied to or to be duped by false prophets. But let's do some examining to see if the prophets of the Mormon church are true or false. All right. Now we're going to talk about Joseph Smith. He's the founder of the Mormon religion. He is a self-proclaimed prophet, so we need to see if he's a real prophet or not. But since he claims to be a prophet, we should be able to take that test in Deuteronomy 18 and apply it to him to see if he's really a prophet. Now, folks, like I said, all the information I got, all the books that I got came from their website, came from their library, their digital library. And right here, the testimony of the prophet Joseph Smith. So we know he's a prophet here, and it says it again. The prophet Joseph Smith's own words about the coming forth of the Book of Mormon are. So he's being called a prophet. So therefore, if he's a prophet and he's given prophetic utterances, if they're from God, they're going to be spot on. Right? Absolutely. Well, what about Joseph Smith? Let's just look at the first prophecy that I brought up. This first prophecy is where he prophesied. He predicted the coming of the Lord. Okay? In 1835, Joseph Smith prophesied. Now, these are quotes as best as I could get and get them to fit on the slide because they were very long prophecies. For the coming of the Lord, which is nigh even 50 years, should wind up the scene. What he's saying is that in 1835, the Lord's going to come back, and within 56 years, it should be wound up. It should happen. Now, I'm not making this up. This is coming from the History of the Church. This is their book, Volume 2, page 182. Well, what happened? Well, as we know, 1835 plus the 56 years is 1891. 1891 was 129 years ago. It has came and went, and the Lord still hasn't come back. All right, well, we just read that if a prophet says something that doesn't come true, that it's not from God, that he's a prideful liar. He's saying it presumptuously. That should alarm. That right there should alarm somebody who's a part of this faith. But let's just don't look for one. Let's look at another one. Prophecy number 2 that I picked out, the David Patton mission trip. Now, on April 17th, 1838, Joseph Smith prophesied this. Now, you're going to say, Vincent, how did you get this information? You're just an Arkansas hillbilly. This is taken from their book, Doctrine and Covenants, 114:1. It is wisdom in my servant David W. Patton that he settle up all his business as soon as he can, that he may perform a mission unto me next spring to testify of my name and bear glad tidings unto the world. All right. So in the spring of 1838, Joseph Smith said the next spring, the following spring, he's going to go on a mission trip. Well, that didn't happen, folks, because David W. Patton died in October of 1838. He never made it to the spring of 1939. Once again, another failed prophecy. Now, this alarms me because I'm doing this study. Folks, I'm telling you right now, I don't just get these books and study them and work up a show for, a week or so in advance. I have been to Utah. I have been to Salt Lake City. I have walked the grounds of their church area. I've seen their golden statues sitting up high. I've been where I was allowed to go because I'm not a Mormon. I've been there. I've investigated. I'm testing their doctrine now. I'm not saying this just lightheartedly. I've done the trip. I've done the work. I've spoke to their evangelists, to their missionaries. All right? I've put some effort into this. Please, listen. Prophecy number 3. The U.S. government will be overthrown. On May the 6th, 1843, Joseph Smith prophesied. Now, this is his quote. This isn't nothing I made up. This is from the History of the Church, Volume 5, page 394. I prophesy in the name of the Lord God of Israel. It better be right. Unless the U.S. redress the wrongs committed upon the saints in the state of Missouri, the government will be utterly overthrown and wasted. In 1843, unless the government redress the wrongs, it'll be overthrown and wasted. 177 years later, and the government still stands to this day. The U.S. government did not redress any wrongs committed against the Missouri Mormons. Now, what they will tell you is that, well, the government apologized. Apology is not redress. Redress means to correct a wrong or provide compensation. If I was to steal something from my best friend, Matt, and he goes, hey, give that back. I said, well, I'm sorry. Did I redress it? No. I made an apology, but I didn't give him back what I stole. That's not how it works. Folks, when you see this, does it alarm you in any way? Yeah, let's just keep going. What about this? Prophecy number 4. We're going to run out of time. I want to keep going. He prophesied that the Congress would be broken up as a government. Taken from a History of the Church, Volume 6, page 116. Congress still stands. Prophecy number 5. He said that the treasure would be found in Salem, Massachusetts. This great treasure. History of the Church, Volume 2, page 465, 466. No treasure to this day has been found. Missed again. What about this? The United States would endure pestilence, hail, famine, and an earthquake. Taken from the History of the Church, Volume 1, page 315, 316. People are going to say, oh, what about the New Madrid earthquake? Folks, the New Madrid earthquake happened in 1811. It was like more than 10 years before this prophecy was made. So that doesn't count. All right? What about number 7 here? For the sake of time, we're just abbreviating. Joseph Smith said that the temple would be built in Zion, Missouri. We know they got ran out of Missouri. The good question is why. Do a little bit of homework, you'll find out. We don't have time to cover it. All right? But I'll tell you this, he went down in a hell of gunfire. I'll just tell you that. Temple built in Missouri, Zion, Missouri. To this day, folks, to this day, this is taken from the History of the Church, Volume 1, page 286 to 295. To this day, that spot where they said that temple would be built, and he made this statement, verily this generation shall not pass away, and that temple would be built. That was 1832. To this day, the only thing that stands on that lot there in Zion, Missouri is grass and broken hopes and dreams and a false prophecy. That's the truth. Folks, even the Mormon church, I'm going to bend down so you can see this, admitted this was a false prophecy. Yes. Joseph Fielding Smith, in Answers to Gospel Questions, Volume 4, page 112, admits that prophecy was incorrect. Is that alarming to you? Does that make you just go, wow, there's something wrong here? Well, if that doesn't, if those 7 prophecies doesn't, what about this? What about Joseph Smith? In July of 1843, he received a revelation from God commanding the practice of polygamy. You know what polygamy is? Having multiple wives or husbands or whatever. He received a revelation from God commanding that he practice polygamy. But 3 months later, it's folks, it's documented right here. 3 months later, he preached a sermon against polygamy. He was going directly against God. Now, this is in their own documents. This wasn't taken from Wikipedia or something. Doctrines and Covenants, page 132. History of the Church, volume 6, page 46. Teachings of the Prophet, page 324. That's where I get this information. What happens in the Bible when a prophet doesn't do what God says, when he does the opposite what God commands? Well, Jonah got cast in the sea and he got swallowed up by a big fish. And go to 1 Kings chapter 13 and you'll find out what a man of God, when he was a prophet and he didn't do what God told him to do, he was killed by a lion. There is consequences for disobeying God, especially when you're a prophet. What did Joseph Smith get out of this by disobeying God? Well, he got multiple wives and one of them being 14 years old. Is that alarming? Let's keep going. All right, the Book of Mormon was written by prophets. We know that because this is an excerpt from their book. It says, the book was written by many ancient prophets by the spirit of prophecy and revelation. Right before that, it says that it is the fullness of the everlasting gospel. That means it is complete. There's nothing more it needs to be done. It's as right as rain. It's perfect. It doesn't need any help. All right? So let's just take the Deuteronomy 18 test and apply it to the Book of Mormon. But to be fair and equitable, we're going to do this also to biblical prophets. Okay? Let's just do this real quick. We're going to look at the Book of Alma. All right? This was written approximately 91 to 88 BC. All right? This is right out of their book. All right? We're going to be focusing on Alma chapter 7 and verse 10 right here. Now I'm going to read verse 9 for you. Get my reading glasses on. It says, but behold, the Spirit hath said this much unto me, saying, cry unto this people, saying, repent ye, prepare the way of the Lord, and walk in his path, which are straight, for behold, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and the Son of God cometh upon the face of the earth. Talking about the coming of Jesus Christ. Well, let's take a closer look at that verse right there. And the verse 10, and behold, he shall be born of Mary at Jerusalem, which is in the land of our forefathers. There's a problem here. We all know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. When you ask this question to Mormons, what they say is, well, the cities were so close they can be considered to be the same place. The prophet Alma predicted that Jesus would be born in Jerusalem. This was like 88, 90 years before Jesus was born. That's what it says in the book. And he missed it. He missed it. Folks, I'm not a scholar. I'm not good at geography, but I found 5 towns in closer proximity to Jerusalem, Bethlehem. I can't pronounce them. I'm going to butcher it. I'll try it. Beth Hecarim, Lashah, Not, Gibeah, Anathoth. Anyway, but these 5 are never referred to as Jerusalem. Why would Bethlehem be referred to as Jerusalem? Boy. We take that Deuteronomy 18 test and we put it up against Alma. What do we find? Failed. He missed it. I'm going to cast him aside. I'm not going to listen to him. But to be fair and equitable, we're going to look at some biblical prophets. We're going to look at Micah. We're going to look at Isaiah. And we're going to look at David, how they prophesied the coming of the Messiah and what was going to happen. Then we're going to tie it back in with the New Testament to see if they jointly fit together, to see if there's some accuracy. Let's take a look at Micah. Now, Micah was written about 800 BC, and we're going to compare it to Matthew, which was written about 90 AD. So we're looking at about 890 years. Micah 5:2, it says, but thou, Bethlehem, Ephratah, thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me, that is to be ruler in Israel. Talking about the coming of Christ. Get in there and study the whole thing. I don't want to be accused of cherry picking. I'm trying to make it the show. All right? Matthew 2:6, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. We're speaking of Christ. Those two fit together. We take the Deuteronomy 18 test and we test Micah with it to see if Micah's a real prophet. What do we find? He's right on track. All right, I'm going to keep Micah. Give him a green check mark. I like him. So Micah, you're good. Let's test old Isaiah. Boy, I like me some Isaiah now. Isaiah was written about 720 BC. We're going to compare it to Acts, written by Luke, about 70 to 90 AD. So we're looking at about 800 years. About 800 years here. Isaiah 16:5, he writes, in mercy shall the throne be established, and he shall sit upon it in truth and tabernacle of David, judging and seeking judgment and hasting righteousness. He's talking about Christ sitting on the throne of David, right? Acts chapter 2, verses 29 and 30, Luke's account of Peter's sermon. Man, what a sermon. Get in Acts 2 and read it. Start from verse 1, go to 47. Verse 29 says, men and brethren, let me freely speak unto you of the patriarch David. Therefore, being a prophet, and knowing that God has sworn an oath unto him, that the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, he would rise up Christ to sit on his throne. Perfect. We take that Deuteronomy 18 test and we apply it to Isaiah, and what do we get? We get right on. Isaiah, you're right on. So there's 2. We're 2 for 2 with biblical prophets. Let's take a look at David. And people are going to say, now hold on. David's a man after God's own heart. Well, David made a lot of mistakes too, just like us. Made mistakes. Let's see if David's prophetic utterances were good. David wrote Psalms 22. It was written about 600 BC. We're going to compare it to the Gospel according to John, which was written about 95 AD. So we're looking at almost 700 years. Psalms 22:16, David writes, "For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet." John writes, "Then saith he to Thomas," this is after Christ arose, and Thomas said, "Man, I need some proof. Reach hither thy finger, and behold my hands. Reach hither thy hand, and thrust in my side. And be not faithless, but believing." Hey, here's another prophecy made like 700 years. Do they fit together? Does David's prophecy hold up to the Deuteronomy 18 test? You know it. You know it. Right on. So we look at these three biblical prophets that were prophesying for about the Messiah and how the New Testament's writing, and they fitly joined together. Perfect. No questions right there, folks. Let's take a look at the book of Nephi. Got about 9 minutes. It was written about 600 BC. It's what's written right down here. All right. We're going to zoom in on look at 2 Nephi chapter 29, verse 6. We take a look at this, and it says, but a Bible, we have got a Bible. We need no more Bible. Have ye obtained a Bible, save it were by the Jews? We see this term Bible being used 13 times in the book of Nephi. The problem is, the word Bible was not recorded until 1300 to 1350 AD. That was 1900 years too early. There's a historical inaccuracy there. That kind of made me think. What about looking at the book of Jacob? Written about 544 to 421 BC. We're going to be looking at Jacob chapter 7, verse 27. Just the latter part. We don't have enough time to read all of it. We're just going to look at what it says right here. "I bid farewell." Now he's talking about these plates, these golden plates, which have small writing on it, and it's for the reader. "And I bid farewell, hoping that many of my brethren read my words." Brethren, adieu. You ever heard that word adieu? That's a French word, not an American word. It didn't first be recorded until 1325 to 1375 AD, 1,950 years after when Joseph Smith said it was recorded. Just another biblical inaccuracy that caused me to think, man, something's up. It caused me to dig a little bit deeper. See, when I see these low-hanging fruit, it causes me to reach up and get even more. It makes me dig harder to see what else I can find. When I find something that's just right there at my reach and it's just simple to see, it causes me to question what else I'm reading. All right, speaking of those golden plates. Now this picture was taken off the Mormon website. Very good painting. All right, I put an arrow here pointing down to these plates. Now this information was taken from the Articles of Faith by Talmage, page 262, 34th edition. See, I provide sources of all my information. These gold plates were roughly 7 inches by 8 inches by about 6 inches deep. You know, when they're stacked together, thin plates, the writing on it was small. They were pure gold. Well, folks, I'm halfway decent at math. I found out that the density of gold is 19.3 grams per cubic centimeter. That equals up to 1,204.7 actually pounds per cubic foot. Well, these plates that he's reading from, that he had several, and he handled, and some other men and women handled, and they passed them around, and they carried them through the woods and everything else. That would mean that they weighed 230 pounds apiece. They must have had a great church gym in order to carry around 230 pounds of plates under each arm. Is that not ridiculous? Let's just keep going. There's so much more. Looking at Doctrine and Covenants, we're looking in chapter 89, verse 11. Now, folks, you're really going to love this one. Let's read it together. "Every herb in the season thereof, and every fruit in the season thereof." Now, we're reading this. This is called Elizabethan English, the same English that the Bible was written in 1611. We may get to that later. "As all these to be used with prudence and thanksgiving." Okay. "Yea, flesh also of beasts and of the fowls of the air, I, the Lord, have ordained for the use of man with thanksgiving. Nevertheless, they are to be used sparingly." All right. "Flesh of beast and fowls of the air, used sparingly. And it is pleasing unto me," now this is supposedly the Lord saying it, that they should not be used only in times of winter, cold, or famine. This is taken from their own doctrine and covenants, from their own doctrine. Well, guess what I found? I've been to Utah. In one building, they've got 4 church-owned restaurants. This one's called the Garden Restaurant. Folks, fancy. What are you talking about? It's nice. Let's see. Right here's shows you this place is open year-round. Year-round. Here's some of their menu. Fried green, bacon, lettuce, tomato, club sandwich with turkey, classic burger, a house burger. Let's keep going. There's more. We've got chicken, steak, pork, salmon, meatloaf, pasta, shrimp, macaroni, and cheese. What about this whole thing about using it sparingly? What about the whole time of eating flesh of the beast or the bird of the air only in winter, cold, or famine? It's from their own doctrine. We're not going to do that. We're just not going to follow that one. We don't like that one. Folks, when you look at someone who claims to be a prophet and they make a prophecy like this right here, what Jesus said. In Matthew 24:2, Jesus said unto them, see ye not all these things? Pay attention to what he's saying. Verily I say unto you, pay attention. There shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. He's talking about the temple in Jerusalem. And what happened? This is a modern picture. Those stones to this day are still laying on the ground. The thing of it is, what we read in the Bible, there is historical proof. The Mormons will tell you that Bible that you've got right here, that Bible has been corrupted. It was corrupted after the apostles died. The problem is that we find evidences like in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Folks, that's just the Bible that's been written that was uncovered. There is so much information. There's so much, almost the complete entire book of Isaiah was found. And we've got that. We can compare it to the Bible we have now, and it's spot on. You may have a conjunction change where like a but or although, and that's it. The discipline, the doctrine is the same. Where's the historical proof of anything, of one thing? Just give me one historical proof of what's in this book right here, the Book of Mormon. Just show me one. Let's keep going. We got a little bit of time. I'm going to wrap it up, but I've got just a couple of minutes. Folks, we talked about how the Book of Mormon is the fullness of gospel. If they've got 6 books they work out of, if the Book of Mormon is the fullness of gospel, then why would you also need to have the pearl of great price added to it? Why would you need to have the doctrine and covenants added to it? Because it was imperfect. You had to do something to make it complete. It wasn't the fullness of the everlasting gospel. It was just another gospel. And what does Galatians 1, chapter 1, verses 6 through 9 say? That there's not another gospel. There's a lot of folks, I know this is hard for some to hear. Do me a favor, go look at John chapter 6 and verse 60. It was even hard for people to hear back when Jesus was walking this earth. Second book of Nephi, written about 588 to 570 BC. We got to be quick on this one. We're looking at 2 Nephi chapter 1 verse 14. Oh man, this is cool. It has the statement in 2 Nephi 1:14, from whence no traveler can return. Again, this is Elizabethan English. Same thing. The King James Bible in 1611 was written by. All right. Look at Shakespeare's Hamlet. Act 3, Scene 1, I believe it's line 70, 89, and 80. He says, no traveler returns. How about Charles Dickens' book, The Life and Adventures of Nicholas Nickleby? Uses the same term, whence no traveler returns. You're going to say, Vinson, that's just a coincidence. All right, then compare Isaiah 53 and 1 Corinthians 13 to what's written here, and it's word for word. Now, folks, I've got a little bit of college under my belt. Not a whole lot. But I know one thing. When I was taking speech class and we were having to write speeches, we were having to write papers, they ran our papers through a device called a plagiarism checker to make sure you wasn't stealing someone else's information. Folks, this is nothing more than plagiarism that we're looking at right here. I'm going to wrap it up. We've ran out of time. Folks, don't believe everything you hear. Don't believe everything you hear. In the Book of Mormon, there was 3,913 changes made. Places, names, events, all that's changed. There was around 17,000 grammatical errors changed. Like 20,000 items. Folks, we love you so much. We've run out of time. Investigate what you hear. Don't believe everything you hear. This is our office number, Matt's personal cell phone number, my personal cell phone number, and our email address, thechristianreporttoday@gmail.com. Thechristianreporttoday@gmail.com. Give us a call. We want to help you. We love you. And folks, we want to help you find the right path. God bless you and good night.